During those years of famine, to ensure my younger brother could continue his studies, I sold myself into servitude and became a low-ranking, menial laborer. For I knew well that only if my brother succeeded in his examinations could we truly change our destinies. Little brother, I have returned. No sooner had I reached our humble cottage than my brother rushed over to ask, Elder brother, where are the wild greens? Why did it take so long to gather them? Li Xiaofan's small frame was swallowed by an oversized, padded robe. The two of us had to share the same piece of clothing. I smiled and said, why bother with wild greens anymore? Today, we feast on meat. As I spoke, I produced a small portion of pork I had bought on my way back. It was not much, but enough for both brothers to finally taste the flavor of meat. Li Xiaofan's body trembled, as he had already deduced the reason. I laughed heartily. I have sold my services. The Yihei Manor paid me 525 copper coins and provided a new set of clothes, though from now on, I will not be able to come and go as I please. Little brother, let us enjoy a proper meal. Father's old robe I leave for you to wear, and with the remaining 500 coins, you must study diligently. I shall work at the manor, and if I have any extra funds, I will find a way to get them to you. Li Xiaofan's eyes welled up with tears. I laughed cheerfully and gently ruffled his hair. I am your elder brother. This small responsibility is merely my duty. You possess a talent for photographic memory, a gift that I could never hope to match. By the way, I have gained a new insight regarding the Mad Bull Fist. I shall demonstrate it a few times for you. You must remember it well. After all, one must have some martial arts to defend oneself. Li Xiaofan wiped his tears and nodded firmly. I assumed a stance right there in the room and threw a punch, as ferocious as a charging bull. Suddenly, strings of faint golden characters materialized from the void, hovering directly before my eyes. 10,000 punches cast, willpower tempered, exceptionally indomitable, awakening now. The heavenly Dao rewards diligence. For every sacrifice made, there shall be a harvest. Mad Bull Fist proficiency. 456 out of 500. The wind of the punch is unadorned. The momentum is like a charging bull, refining the flesh and blood. This martial art has no shortcuts. It can only be mastered through grueling training. Li Xiaofan asked, brother, what has happened to you? I smiled and patted Li Xiaofan's head. It is nothing at all. Younger brother, we must strive harder so that we are no longer bullied by others. It seems that my transmigration to this world was not without its own golden finger. I continued to practice my punches over and over again, for with a steely will, even the hardest iron must eventually yield. One day, I was assigned to clean out an abandoned room, where the weeds had grown rampant, their roots dug deep into the earth, making them incredibly difficult to pull. After working at this task for only an hour, my back was already aching with exhaustion. I patiently pulled them out. One by one, proficiency +1. Weeding, beginner level. Proficiency 125 out of 500. Pulling weeds, always pulling weeds. A mere minor skill, a trivial technique. Whether it be a 3-year-old child or an 80-year-old man who does not know how to perform such a task. To enter the path is easy, but to achieve mastery depends on the will of the heavens. A beginner's prompt appeared. Every time I bent down to pull the weeds, I gained insight, gradually uncovering the secrets of the task, and my speed increased significantly. Weeding no longer seemed as exhausting as it once did. Proficiency reached its limit. Weeding mastered. My back straightened as if supporting the heavens, my feet planted firmly upon the earth. Though this path is small, it still contains the laws of the Tao. Young man, have you gained any enlightenment yet? At this moment, my progress on the path of weeding was equivalent to that of a miscellaneous laborer who had toiled for several years. A miscellaneous laborer, you say? When one's fate is not in one's own hands, how can one afford to be idle? If I were to finish the work too quickly and complete my tasks ahead of schedule, I would undoubtedly be assigned even more menial chores. It is better to intentionally pace myself, using this spare time to cultivate my own capabilities. And so, while taking breaks from weeding, I would occasionally stop to unleash a few punches into the air, practicing the Manding first. I became increasingly proficient, and with every strike I could feel the tangible results of my labor. I worked until dusk, pausing only to consume a simple midday meal. Although it lacked any grease or substance, it was enough to fill my stomach. Proficiency reached its limit. The Ma-Niu Fist technique has been mastered. The Ma-Niku Fist is valiant. Its strikes truly astonishing. I felt a current of warmth flowing toward my lower abdomen. This is internal energy. This world possesses internal energy. I could feel this warmth, though I could not quite define what it was. Having never been exposed to the path of a martial artist, I nonetheless understood clearly that this was a benefit, and certainly not a harm. I attempted to use my consciousness to guide the stream of warmth, channeling it into my fist before throwing another punch. As my fist tore through the air, it emitted a faint, thunderous sound, like that of a wild beast. I was ecstatic, yet I dared not grow arrogant. I hurriedly lowered my head and continued weeding. As twilight fell, the steward arrived at the dilapidated quarters to inspect the work of each servant. Damn it! What kind of cleaning is this? He ran a finger along the corner of a wardrobe, catching a thin layer of dust, and immediately began cursing while raining blows upon the servant. The servant was beaten until his face was bruised and swollen, yet he dared not utter a single word of protest. Selling one's service to another may provide a meager meal to survive, but the bitterness and humiliation that come with it must be swallowed in silence. Since your work is unsatisfactory, you shall not rest tonight. As it happens, the primary storage room is short-handed. You will go there to assist. Bitao waved his hand dismissively before continuing his inspection to see who was responsible for the latrine. Upon reaching the latrine, Bihao's expression turned chillingly grim. It was a new servant, roughly the same age as Li Xiaofan, only 11 or 12 years old. What is this? Bihao pointed toward a streak of filth, glaring at the servant with the arrogance of a superior. The servant, confused, did not understand the demand. Lick it clean, Bihao commanded coldly, leaving the servant frozen in shock. Bihao sneered, grabbing the servant by the hair and forcing his head down toward the filth. Ah! What are you doing? Lick it clean for me. I'll lick it. I'll lick it. The servant, consumed by humiliation, obeyed. Bihao swept his gaze across the crowd, warning them. Listen closely. Do not be fooled by the dilapidated appearance of this house. The people staying here are guests of the madam, all of them figures of great renown. Even their excrement is as precious as gold and silver, let alone the likes of you. Even I, if the madam commanded it, would obey without hesitation, and I would consider it an honor. Bihao glared at the servant. Does it smell? Terrified of another beating, the servant hurriedly nodded. It smells. Bihao let out a burst of arrogant laughter. That is how it should be, isn't it? This is what a servant is. A mere servant who has sold their life away. If you lot possessed any talent, you might have held some utility or status. But you have none. No one among the crowd dared to respond. Some wore expressions of numbness. Others bore their humiliation in silence. Yet deep within, I shook my head. No matter how dire the circumstances may be, and no matter how lowly one's station, one must never lose their spirit, even unto death. That pride must remain. The next turn was mine. My assigned task was weeding. Bihao looked at me with an enigmatic gaze and nodded. Very well. I walked to the backyard and touched the whip coiled around his waist. Compared to cleaning or digging out latrines, weeding is the most difficult task and the hardest to satisfy requirements for. One either leaves the roots behind or leaves the soil a complete mess. Menial servants assigned to weeding are usually destined to taste the lash. Yet when Bihao arrived at the backyard, he was instantly stunned. Where was the grass? I pointed toward the cart nearby. I have finished the weeding. It has all been loaded onto the cart. Bichao verified that there were no errors, then stomped his foot against the ground, immediately struck with amazement. After finishing the weeding, I had even leveled and packed the soil flat. This youth either possessed farming experience or performed his duties with extreme care and thorough consideration. Not bad. Not bad at all. What is your name? Bihao offered a rare smile. My name is Li Xian, I answered truthfully. Bihao shook his head and said, that name is not good. For a servant, it is not fitting. You worked well today. You may go to the accounting office to collect a reward of 3 copper coins. Rest well tonight, and strive harder tomorrow. I thank Elder Bia for the reward, I shouted, as was customary. The bow I made at this moment was not a loss of spirit, but a calculated submission after clearly assessing the reality of my situation. Upon hearing the title Elder By, Bihako felt a surge of satisfaction and patted my shoulder with a loud laugh. Ha ha, this young man is quite sharp. That night, I lay on the wooden bed, unable to fall asleep. My mind raced, contemplating Bihato's words, which were undoubtedly correct. Even for a menial laborer, one must possess a skill of their own. If I could master cooking or a bit of gardening, life within the manor would surely become much easier. If there is an opportunity, one should strive to rise, though as a transmigrator, this ambition seems somewhat small. I immediately stopped overthinking and drifted into sleep. Before I knew it, the 5th watch arrived, and the sky was yet to brighten. I jolted awake, and suddenly, a flash appeared before my eyes. Sleeping skill proficient. Proficiency and knack for laziness reached the entry level. Since ancient times, who doesn't sleep? Do not wait until the final, eternal slumber to realize the value of rest. Could it be that this most ordinary of sleeps actually contains its own secret techniques? Before I could ponder this further, the chore master struck the gong. Wake up, wake up. It is time to begin work. That cry was the signal for every day. The moment it sounded, it heralded the beginning of another day of labor. Because I performed well weeding yesterday, Manager Ha assigned me to handle the rear courtyard of the Huang residence. Tasked specifically with clearing weeds, I found the work surprisingly idle and pleasant. This patch of weeds meant nothing to me. Having grown accustomed to the task, it was far easier than any other labor. I rolled up my sleeves, bent my back, and buried myself in the work. In the blink of an eye, dusk fell, and Manager Ha arrived for his routine inspection. Seeing the weeds in the rear courtyard cleared away, organized and tidy, he nodded in satisfaction. However, this time he did not reward me with silver, merely stating coldly, "Very well. Tomorrow, go to the neighboring quarters and continue weeding." Just like that, several days passed. I was required to do nothing else, solely responsible for pulling weeds. Outsiders assumed I was suffering through exhaustion, yet they did not know that my free time was becoming increasingly abundant. Clearing the weeds in the backyard only took half the day. The remaining time, I dedicated to practicing the fierce bull fist. That evening, the knack for laziness skill reached full proficiency. Once the skill of weeding reached the minor achievement stage, pulling grass 1,000 times sparked a miracle. Focusing on my breath allowed me to perceive its profound mysteries. According to the description, while weeding, I concentrated on my breathing and felt the exhaustion throughout my body diminish significantly. After mastering the art of weeding to a minor level, it seemed to have bolstered my patience and my overall resilience to fatigue. This effect appeared to originate from the rhythm of my breath. I discovered that my breathing was becoming increasingly clear, possessing an indescribable natural quality that was undeniably beneficial. In comparison, the progress of the sabotage first was somewhat slower, yet it remained substantial. I could feel the current of heat in my dancing growing. What began as a tiny stream had now grown to the thickness of a finger. My punches also carried more force, and these developments granted me a sliver of security. Although weeding day after day afforded me plenty of free time, it did nothing to improve my social standing. So how could I break through this deadlock? I could not help but ponder. Now that I have entered this deep, sprawling estate, I must seize every opportunity to climb higher. I have not seen my younger brother in a long time. Today, I must ask Bihao if it is possible to send a letter home. The sun had not yet set, and I had already finished the weeding. I hurried back to the chore servant quarters. Just as I was about to knock, I heard voices from within. The voice of Steward Lafang spoke first. "You may appear formidable while managing the other chore servants, but in terms of status and rank, you are, in the end, nothing more than a lowly servant." "Uncle La, you are right. I understand this clearly." Bin Hao was extremely tactful, assuming Uncle La had come to reprimand him. "I have come to see you today to bring you some news. The matriarch intends to select a robust chore servant to become a guard. If you were to become a guard, things would be entirely different. You could be rewarded with cultivation resources by the madam, and your future prospects would be immense." "Uncle Lei, is this truly the case? You must help me." Immediately after, a thud echoed in the room. Bihatao was kneeling in supplication while offering a cup of hot tea. Lafang nodded inwardly, accepting the hot tea, blew away the tea leaves floating on the surface, and took a small sip, putting on the airs of a big shot. While savoring cheap tea, he let out a long sigh and spoke leisurely. "Naturally. This matter is of vital importance to your future. I will not hide it from you. I too was once a guard. Although you are my cousin, if you wish to truly distinguish yourself, you must fight for it on your own. Master Pang has instructed me to announce this matter, informing the servants who wish to register with him that they must prepare to participate in the trials for the inner courtyard guard. I came to tell you first." And Tihao's face lit up with joy. "What do those animals have to compare with me? This position as a guard is surely already mine." Lafang replied calmly. "That is not a perspective one should hold. The selection for the guards emphasizes martial talent, fundamental bone structure, raw strength, endurance, and character. While you possess some martial foundation, you have never truly been tested. Furthermore, those animals are not fools. How could they pass up such an opportunity? They will naturally risk everything to seize it. They would sooner die on the arena floor than retreat." "Are you saying that you are truly, completely certain? Could it be that Master Pang would not even grant you this small modicum of face? If you are not selected, this opportunity will be lost entirely." Tia Hao spoke with hidden meaning, asking him for guidance. "I am willing to serve as your beast of burden in the future to repay this debt." Tia Hao kowtowed 3 times forcefully, saying, "This matter is simple." Lafang said, "During this period, you must focus solely on your fist training, practicing until you have mastered the 3 talents fist I have taught you. Following that, arrange for those who appear large, strong, and full of vitality to perform the most grueling manual labor to exhaust their physical strength." "Uncle Lei, this plan is truly brilliant." Ti Hao was overjoyed, but Lafang shook his head, saying, "That is not all. That man, surnamed Pang, told me to spread the news, and I naturally dare not disobey. But I can choose to do so late at night when everyone is asleep, mentioning it to as few people as possible." Ti Hao kowtowed 3 more times, the sound echoing clearly. "Uncle La, your great kindness and virtue. I do not know how I shall ever repay you. You need only remember my benevolence. That is enough." Lafang said, "There are 15 days left until the guard selection. See that you make good use of them." I had heard the entire conversation between the two of them. and my heart was filled with both rage and delight. Not daring to remain there any longer, I hurried back to my abandoned room. This Tian Hao clearly possesses no small amount of strength, yet he prefers to rely on these underhanded schemes. Fortunately, now that I am aware of it, I shall keep to the shadows, register in secret, and suppress the excitement surging within my heart. In the backyard of the abandoned quarters, I practiced the Python Demon First technique repeatedly. Would this be the key to surpassing others? Everything now depends on this martial art. As dusk fell, Bihao arrived to patrol as usual. I pretended that nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Bihao gave a slight nod. Good, very good. Your work today was not bad at all, little eye. You may head to the treasurer's room to collect 3 coppers as a reward. I bowed and replied, You look radiant today. Your complexion is glowing. You must have encountered some good fortune, haven't you? I wiped the sweat from my forehead. I feigned an expression of utter exhaustion. Ha ha. Bihao laughed heartily. You little brat. You have quite an eye for detail. As for what kind of good fortune it is, do not ask. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. On the contrary, it is you who must focus. Just obediently pull out all these weeds. If you do well, you might earn a few more coppers. Don't overthink things and waste your energy. His tone was filled with disdain and contempt. As he spoke, a thought suddenly crossed his mind. He looked me up and down, thinking, This kid looks quite tall and sturdy. He pulls weeds quickly despite the arduous labor. His stamina must be decent. Little lie. There are several more abandoned houses and plots of land overgrown with weeds here. How about this? If you clear the weeds from one abandoned house each day, I see that you have been working hard, so I have made a special request for you. Every day, if you perform well, you will be able to collect 3 coppers. I sneered inwardly, but maintained a joyful expression on my face. Sir, are you speaking the truth? If I can earn 3 coppers a day by clearing one house, doesn't that mean I will have 30 coppers in 10 days? Ha ha. Bihao laughed loudly, feeling immensely satisfied. I didn't expect you to be quite decent at mental calculations. After Bihao departed, my expression returned to a calm state, and I quietly tightened my grip into a fist. I must seize this opportunity. Within these next 15 days, I must strive to reach the minor success realm in the Python Demon Fist. When the day of the competition arrives, I will catch Bihao off guard, which will be my only chance at victory. A surge of ambition rose within me, my eyes filled with determination and brilliance. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had already passed, and I remained in the backyard. I unleashed a punch of immense power. The force of the blow was staggering, searing through the air, and amidst the haze, one could almost hear the roar of a green ox. The proficiency of the Manhua First Remnant technique reached 412. Mastery in this art lies in restraint and concealing one's aura. Only by remaining calm and unhurried can one accomplish great things. Hearing footsteps approaching, I hurriedly withdrew my stance, lowered my head, and began pulling weeds, feigning laziness. I had long since become accustomed to this routine, pulling a handful of weeds, then practicing a few forms of the fist. In this way, I could easily satisfy the patrols. 12 days remained. At this rate, my Manhua First would surely advance to the minor achievement realm. It is a pity that this fist technique is but a remnant, lacking a complete system. My greatest rival is Bihao. He cultivates the Sankai fist. I do not know the true depth of his skill, but at the very least, it is a complete set of techniques. If we were to face each other directly, unless I could defeat him with a single surprise strike, then by relying on the completeness of his technique, he would surely hold the advantage. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you will never be defeated. After a few more days, I shall go and observe Bihao practicing his fist art in secret. Hearing the footsteps fade away, I kicked the weeds aside, planted my feet firmly, and resumed practicing the Manhua First. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the proficiency of my Manhua First reached 712. To reach the minor achievement realm before the handyman competition is as good as certain. What delighted me even more was that my weeding technique had also reached great achievement. By pulling countless weeds, I suddenly gained an epiphany. Weeds are never truly eradicated. When the spring breeze blows, all things flourish once more. The essence of endless life lies within this cycle. I possess a resilience greater than the average man, having gained enlightenment through the act of weeding. I feel that I have become more composed, having endured monotony and solitude, having withstood fatigue and the biting cold. Just when I thought things would continue this way, a sudden ringing of bronze gongs echoed through the air at noon. I furrowed my brows. This was the signal to summon all the handymen. Anyone who fails to assemble after 3 strikes of the bronze gong may be executed on the spot. In front of the handyman quarters, over 1,000 laborers had gathered, pushing and shoving one another. I squeezed into the center of the crowd, busy with labor throughout the day. Everyone's faces were ashen, their hair disheveled, and their tattered, mismatched clothing covered in a uniform layer of gray grime. My own ragged garments were no exception. While gathering, I specifically scanned the crowd, yet there was no sign of Birch Hao. Earlier, while passing by La Fuang's residence, I had vaguely heard the sound of a woman crying. In retrospect, could it be that La Fuyong had arranged for Birch Hao to practice martial arts inside his quarters? I pondered this silently amidst the crowd. Lao Fusong commanded the squad leaders to check the headcount of their respective groups, and upon seeing that no one was missing, he spoke. All of you are truly fortunate. Listen clearly, let me tell you this. To be able to serve Madame Trang is your greatest honor, a blessing that is hard to come by, even if one were to beg for it. As usual, La Fusheng launched into a long-winded speech praising the mysterious Madame Trang with what seemed like genuine devotion before finally declaring, Madame Trang intends to cook a golden treasure, and this golden treasure requires a vast quantity of water to simmer. From this day forth, all 1,000 of you shall set aside your current duties and focus entirely on transporting water from the mountain stream 3 miles away to the manor. You squad leaders surely know how this should be carried out. I have no need for further details. You may begin. As he flicked his sleeve and departed alone, I caught a scent of something ominous. I pulled a nearby servant aside and asked, what is the meaning of this? Does cooking this golden treasure truly require 1,000 servants to transport water? Are you new here? The servant replied, things that high-ranking personages involve themselves in, how could we possibly hope to understand them? We need only follow orders. Asking too many questions will do you no good. With a sense of uncertainty, I was swept along by the throng of people out of the manor. Once we stood in line about 30 zang away from the manor, the leader of the 9th servant squad said to me, Number 27, wait here. When you see someone carrying water arrive, receive it, and then pass the water to the next person. I understood immediately. It turned out that this water transportation was to be conducted via a relay system, with each person carrying the water for a segment of the journey to ensure a constant supply for Madame Trang. A single whim from her is enough to keep us all scrambling in a frantic rush. I collected my thoughts and asked the overseer, how long do these situations typically last? Does our manor not have its own water supply? The overseer furrowed his brow, his expression clearly betraying his displeasure. Being quick-witted, I slipped a few copper coins into his hand and added, I am merely curious. I hope the overseer can enlighten me a little. Upon receiving the reward, the overseer's expression softened considerably as he said, it does no harm to tell you. For a personage like the madam, her diet is vastly different from ours. It is said that this time she is stewing a very peculiar meat. It must be simmered for a long time to purge it of its toxins. At a rough estimate, it must be simmered for 3 full days and 3 nights. We do indeed have water in the manor, but what if it should run short? Therefore, once the stewing begins, we must transport water continuously. Focus on your tasks and do them well. Every time we encounter this, those who survive the labor will receive 10 times the reward, and furthermore, a feast to sate their hunger. At the very least, one gets to eat a drumstick. Trusk, that flavor. The overseer revealed a look of anticipation. I felt utterly helpless. This unexpected turn of events had ruined my entire plan. Having to stand guard here and haul water all day made it impossible to refine my fist techniques. Meanwhile, that man is likely training his martial arts in peace. Comparing the two, the gap between us widens instantly. But having reached this point, there is nothing else to be done. There are many difficulties in this world, and to give up so easily is certainly not my style. The water is here. Where are you people in the back? Why have you not come to collect the water yet? Watch it, be careful. Don't spill a drop, or you'll be tasting the whip. On the distant mountain, the laborers moved with a bucket in each hand, racing down the slope. After delivering the buckets, they hurried back up the mountain to continue gathering water and bringing it down. It was an endless, repetitive cycle. Seeing the laborers begin their frantic toil, Luo Fang sneered, thinking to himself, heaven truly aids me. A pack of base animals. It is not that I, Luo Fang, refuse to give you a chance to change your fates, but that you were born with meager destinies and lack the fortune for it. Luo Fang reclined on his chair, leisurely watching the busy crowd. Whenever he grew tired of lying down, he would stand and pace, and if anyone dared to slack off, he would lash them with his whip. Naturally, he controlled his strength with great precision, wounding only the flesh without damaging their sinews or bones, and furthermore, he struck only their backs, never their hands or feet. His sense of superiority was evident. He was truly a man who spoke without feeling the weight of others' burdens. Witnessing the gazes of the laborers, a mixture of admiration and fear, he felt even more gratified. Before he knew it, twilight had fallen, and finally, there was a brief moment of respite. The cook from the kitchen pushed a cart of hot food toward them, distributing warm rice and broth to the laborers one by one. As soon as the food touched their lips, the flavor was noticeably different. It was far saltier than usual. But this salt was precisely the life-saving medicine they needed, helping them rapidly restore their strength to continue their toil. At that moment, outside the door, Lafang cracked his whip, the sound echoing sharply through the air. Though night had descended, The water-carrying path was lined with burning torches, yet the laborers continued to haul water without pause, gritting their teeth and enduring throughout the entire night. In their state of utter exhaustion, the laborers' minds grew hazy. Suddenly, a dull thud echoed as one of the laborers collapsed straight to the ground. La Fang let out a cold snort. The man was still alive, yet it seemed he was beyond saving. "Carry him away! Take him away, that useless trash! It is a waste of the estate's resources to have raised him." With one person removed from the line of water carriers, the distance between each individual naturally increased, and the burden was redistributed onto the shoulders of the remaining laborers. From that point on, every half hour, another person collapsed. Some died from ruptured heart meridians due to exhaustion, while others suffered torn tendons and severed limbs. As for me, though I was on the verge of death, I did not perish. And at last I managed to hold on until the fourth day and night, when the final bucket of water was poured into the bronze cauldron and transformed into clouds of steam. The flames finally flickered out. At long last, I had succeeded. The labor overseer La Fang, the guard commander Peng Long, and the others all bowed low, offering their respects to welcome Madame Zhuang. I was present as well. I stood in a hidden corner, keeping my head bowed, staring at my own feet. From the corner of my eye, I could see the hem of Madame Zhuang's dress and her white silk shoes embroidered with phoenixes. Though I could not see her face, I heard her voice drifting toward us. "I have already taken the finest portions of the meat for my own use. The remaining soup is to be divided into 10 parts. Pang Long, you shall take 7 parts and distribute them as you see fit. But you are not La Fang. Take 3 portions, dilute them with water, and distribute it among the menial laborers so they might exert themselves for my sake. Consider this a reward." Her voice was ethereal, yet it carried an air of undeniable authority. Before anyone could recover their senses, a gust of wind swept through, and the lady of the manor had vanished without a trace. La Fang stepped forward and said fawningly, "Brother Bang, we cannot possibly consume all 3 portions of the soup. Please accept these 2 portions as a gesture of our respect." Bang Long, his stature imposing and his features coarse, glanced at him once and said coldly, "The lady has already made her arrangements. If she said 3 portions, then it is 3 portions. Do you dare to defy her orders?" "I dare not. I dare not." La Fang offered a conciliatory smile, hurriedly wiping the sweat from his brow. Cold sweat poured down his face, and his legs trembled uncontrollably. Bang Long let out a cold snort, ordered his men to take the 7 portions of soup, and turned to leave. The remaining 3 portions naturally fell into La Fang's hands. La Fang desperately wanted to keep it all for himself, but Bang Long obeyed the lady's commands with absolute devotion. He dared not disobey her, even in the slightest. He muttered to himself, "The lady said to distribute them as I see fit. I shall consume 1.5 portions. I am at a critical juncture in my martial arts training. I will give him 1 portion, and as for the remaining half, I shall dilute it with leaf broth. Feeding that to the menial laborers will suffice. Consider it a favor to them." He was so engrossed in his own speech that he completely forgot I was standing right beside him, having heard every word. I could not help but clench my fists. The lady of the manor's intention was clearly for all 3 portions to be shared among the laborers. Yet, through La Fang's manipulation, Hao, who had done absolutely nothing, was still going to enjoy a full portion. Meanwhile, La Fang would monopolize 1.5 portions. I gripped my fist tightly, a flicker of ruthlessness hidden within my exhausted eyes. With 3 days remaining, I must master the fierce fish fist technique to the minor success stage at any cost. Setting this matter aside for the moment, life as a menial laborer returned to its routine. I continued weeding, but used the opportunity to refine my fist techniques. My proficiency was currently 756 1/1000ths to reach mastery. But at my current pace, I fear 3 days will not be enough. I gritted my teeth, fortifying my resolve, and practiced my strikes with even greater urgency. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. My proficiency reached 872 1/1000ths. Only 1 day remained. That afternoon, in the laborers' quarters, I ate a meager meal of steamed buns and water to suffice. I cast a leisurely gaze around my surroundings, observing that both La Fang and Tat Hao were absent and that the other handymen were paying me no mind. I slipped away quietly. Once I was out of their sight, I accelerated toward the guards' courtyard. The registration must be handled at the very last moment. That wily, treacherous La Fang would surely target me if I registered too early. If I fail to pass the selection for the estate guards this time, my fate will be utterly disastrous. La Fang will not spare me. This is a gamble where I either win everything or lose it all. I clenched my fists until my palms grew damp with sweat, yet my steps remained steady, my eyes reflecting a flicker of unwavering resolve. After checking in at the handyman quarters, I stole away to the abandoned room I usually clean. Waiting until the dead of night, under the moonlight and the cool breeze, I threw punch after punch until dawn. I struck tirelessly, oblivious to sleep, my clothes soaked through with sweat as if I had been drenched in rain, while time slowly ticked away. Proficiency 976 out of 1000, mastery achieved. By now, the sky was brightening, and the morning bell from the handyman quarters began to chime. If I am not mistaken, the overseer must have already begun the roll call. Lefang is likely aware that I did not return for the night, and according to the rules of Enkia Hoa Trang, he could easily use this as a pretext to cause trouble and have me executed. Without the drive to rise above, how can one be called a true man? Rules are merely instruments used to bully the honest and weak. I ignored the sound of the morning bell, focusing solely on throwing my fists, time and time again. Proficiency: 989 out of 1000. You are truly bold, daring to spend the night away from your quarters. Overseer Leia has spoken. If you appear immediately, he may yet spare your life. Where are you hiding? Come out at once! I know you are nearby. The handymen of the 9th Squad were searching everywhere. Lefang manages the handymen through a system of collective responsibility. My disappearance has caused the other handymen of the 9th Squad the most anxiety. They quickly converged upon the vicinity of the abandoned house. At that very moment, my entire body trembled. A surge of warmth condensed within my dantian, refusing to dissipate. The proficiency limit was reached. The remnant technique of the savage ox first had attained the minor mastery stage. Heaven rewards the diligent. After training my techniques throughout the night, I have finally reaped the rewards and caught up to the required progress. I climbed over the wall in the backyard, successfully avoiding the patrol of the miscellaneous servants. As long as I successfully join the guard squad, I can escape this current tribulation. Although I have violated the regulations for servants, Lefang is a person who bullies the weak and fears the strong. He would never dare to come and demand anyone back from Pang Long. At the main courtyard of the guard squad, the competition to select new guards was about to begin. Pang Long sat at the front, with a subordinate standing on either side of him. The 3 candidates for the guard position stood amidst the servants, wearing common servant attire, yet their tall and straight frames stood out like a crane among chickens. Pang Long swept his gaze across the crowd, lingering on one of them for a few seconds, thinking that among these people, only this, Ti Hao, possessed any real presence. As the time approached, Pang Long asked the guard standing beside him, "Is there anyone else who hasn't arrived?" Before his words could fade, a flurry of footsteps echoed toward them. I rushed into the courtyard, caught my breath for a moment, and said, "Commander Pang, I have arrived." You are not yet late. Join the ranks," Pang Long said indifferently. "Why are you here too? Who gave you permission to come?" Tai Hao had already recognized me, his eyes widening in complete astonishment. I narrowed my eyes slightly and replied, "It was my own decision to come. Since we are competitors, I look forward to your guidance when the time comes." "You brat, you hid this well. You knew about this as well?" Tai Hao felt a surge of anger and leaned in to whisper, "Are you even worthy of calling yourself my brother?" "Very well. Since you have appeared here, this is becoming interesting. You have quite the nerve to compete against me. Wait and see how I deal with you." I could not be bothered to argue, and clenched my hands into fists. A true man must use his fists to speak. As the hour struck, Pang Long rose from his seat. "The guard recruitment begins now. There is only one The premise was simple. A martial arts arena had been erected in the courtyard. There was only one rule, and the duration was set to the time it takes for a single incense stick to burn. The person standing on the stage when the time expired would become the new guard. As soon as the voice faded, a servant quickly occupied the stage, glancing around with heightened vigilance. Not long after, another servant ascended the platform. Both were mere servants, their bodies neither robust nor imposing. They lacked physical stature, and their combat skills were naturally unremarkable. Yet they emanated a sense of ruthless savagery. Truly a sight to behold with dread. Pang Long nodded inwardly. For servants seeking to change their fate, it is this sheer recklessness that they must rely upon. I glanced at Pang Long, turning the details of the competition over in my mind. Within the duration of an incense stick, whoever can remain standing until the very end shall be the victor. In other words, there is no limit to the number of challenges one can initiate. Since my ultimate opponent is none other than Bi Hao, perhaps I should ascend the stage now, feigning a lack of martial knowledge, deliberately misleading Bi Hao into underestimating me. Then, I shall pretend to be overwhelmed and be kicked off the stage, while using this opportunity to remain in the shadows and bide my time. Once the incense is nearly consumed, I will step back onto the stage to seize that final, fleeting chance. As I pondered this, one of the matches concluded. I immediately ascended the stage to face a servant even thinner than myself. We grappled without a shred of technique, like common hoodlums in a street brawl, using everything from teeth to fingernails. Strikes to the lower abdomen, gouging at the eyes. Every desperate measure was employed. Bin Hao stood with his arms crossed, looking thoroughly smug, his eyes filled with contempt. How could such vermin be worthy of competing against me? Yet, old Luo was not wrong. These mad dogs, seeing their only opportunity to change their fate, were truly fighting for their lives, though unfortunately they lacked the wits to back it up. Watching from below the stage, Bean Hao suppressed a laugh as I shoved my opponent away with all my might, sending him tumbling off the platform. I stood there, panting heavily, and let out a furious roar. Who is next? At my challenge, another servant rushed onto the stage and lunged toward me. Though I was partially feigning exhaustion, it was, in reality, no easy task. Every single person here is a beast backed into a corner. In such a desperate plight, the strength a human can unleash is truly terrifying. The servant's fingernails were incredibly long, tearing through my arm. I cursed at him. Get lost! I then spun around, using every ounce of my strength to kick the servant off the arena. Moments later, another servant lunged forward, pinning me to the ground. This servant knew how to wrestle, intending to choke me from behind. A ruthless glint flashed in my eyes as I reached out to gouge his eyes. Overcome by agony, the servant's strength faltered. Seizing the opportunity to counterattack, I exerted all my might and secured victory once more. Because the guard told Feng Tianyu that this boy only possessed brute strength, but if his foundation of internal energy was solid, he might be selected as a guard. Lord Pang, that Bihao has a martial arts foundation. Is this not too unfair? Pang Longwen simply replied indifferently. Rules are rules. I do not speak of fairness with servants. As he spoke, I had already won another match. The next match saw Bihao step onto the arena. Bihao said with cold arrogance, You piece of trash, Wenbuni. Let me show you my true power. Go back to your servant quarters and stay there. Without another word, he unleashed a fierce kick. Though I could have dodged it, I intentionally pretended to be too slow, using the momentum to roll off the arena. His strike was truly vicious. Feng Tianyu exclaimed in shock. Bihao! That kick utilized hidden force, capable of damaging the internal organs. With your weak constitution, you could have been killed by that blow. I was indeed in agonizing pain, but protected by my internal energy, I had not yet lost the ability to move. I lay sprawled on the ground, pretending to be in pain, yet my eyes remained unnaturally calm as I glanced at the incense stick in the distance. The charade had been played out. While I recovered my strength, I waited for the final moment. Bihao possessed a foundation in martial arts and was far stronger than the common servants. Since he took the stage, the tide of battle had been entirely one-sided. Yet even so, the desperation of his opponents had managed to wound him. As the incense stick burned down bit by bit, Bihao remained standing, unyielding. Looking down at the arena floor littered with fallen servants, he burst into arrogant laughter. A bunch of curs. What qualifications do you have to contend with me? What qualifications do you have to contend with me? Pang Long glanced at the incense stick, feeling that no further surprises would arise. The incense is nearly spent. Anyone who wishes to try, seize this final opportunity. This guard selection tournament was finally coming to an end, and it seemed nothing would truly surprise him. At this moment, I forced myself to rise. Without a word, I walked toward the arena once more. A defeated dog like you dares to step onto the stage again? Bihao grew unreasonably enraged at my return. I gently rubbed my abdomen and climbed onto the platform, looking as though I were on the verge of collapse. But deep within those eyes, a golden light had begun to converge. Pang Long raised an eyebrow, a flicker of admiration stirring in his heart. Begin at once. The incense stick is nearly burnt out. Seize this final opportunity to secure your victory. His words were akin to pouring oil onto a raging fire. Xin Hao clenched his fists. With victory already within his grasp, he could no longer maintain his composure, yearning only to cast me from the stage, so that he might stand alone as the victor. Having made up his mind, he took a deep breath, lunged forward, and struck a blow directly at my face. I raised my arms to defend, and with a sharp crack, his fist collided with my forearms. In that instant, I recognized this as the palm wall fist from the Three Talents martial arts, a technique designed to strike the midsection, while appearing ordinary on the surface. The force concealed within was immense. Against an opponent untrained in martial arts, it was a move that all but guaranteed victory. Though I had only just blocked his blow, my arms throbbed with unending pain, and it was only through sheer strength of will that I managed to endure. Although I had never studied the Three Talents martial arts myself, I had analyzed the flow of Xiao's techniques while observing from the sidelines. During the previous matches, Xiao had been blinded by his own arrogance, and in his desperate attempt to impress Pang Long, he had deliberately flaunted his martial prowess, laying bare every nuance of his footwork and strikes, unaware that I had silently memorized them all. A moment later, I noticed the range of Xiao's attacks beginning to widen. I rejoiced in silence. The opportunity I had been waiting for had finally arrived. In that very heartbeat, I let out a low roar, the fury in my chest erupting as I unleashed the first move of the ferocious bull fist, the wild bull gores. The strike flowed forth as naturally as water and as swift as drifting clouds. Having been repressed for so long, the force behind the strike felt as if a maddened beast was charging, using its razor-sharp horns to gore its target head-on. Xiao's expression shifted to one of terror, and he scrambled to shift from offense to defense. Though this blow did not fell him, it completely shattered his defensive rhythm. I whispered to myself, The blue bull wags its tail. I pivoted, swung my fist and harnessed the twisting torque of my waist and abdomen to amplify the power of the strike. Despite the raw force of the martial art, there was a hidden finesse to it, much like the snapping of a whip. The thousands of blows I had practiced before were all for the sake of this single moment. A surge of warmth radiated from my dantian, and the aura imbued within my thwack. The blow landed squarely on Tihao's shoulder, nearly shattering his joint entirely. I heard the faint, sickening sound of bone fracturing, but it was not Tihao's. It was my own. As a mere laborer, barely fed or clothed, my constitution was already frail, and my bones lacked the strength of a true cultivator. I suppressed the searing pain. I did not utter a sound, yet Tihao let out a shrill, miserable cry. The agony was so intense that he instinctively recoiled to create distance. At a glance, one might have thought it was Tihao's bones that had cracked. I know only 3 moves, and this sequence requires catching the opponent off guard. Once committed, it must be decisive, or it serves no purpose. In that split second, I extended my left hand and unleashed the plucking the grass technique. There was naturally no grass to pluck on this martial arena, but my true target was Tihao's hair. I gripped his hair tightly, immediately following through with the third move. The savage bull raises its head, driving a strike straight into his face. As the blow connected, Tihao's features were flattened inward. A large clump of his hair was torn out by the roots. Blood began to trickle down, and as a final measure, I delivered a heavy kick. I sent him flying off the arena, just as the last of the long incense stick burned to its end. Everything had been calculated to the millisecond. I did not need to win every exchange, only the most vital one. Tihao clutched his head, his hand coming away drenched in blood. The pain caused him to gasp repeatedly, his mouth spewing endless curses at the bastard who struck him. "Damn you! I will kill you!" Tihao rolled up his sleeves, intent on charging back onto the stage. He had finally realized the truth. This brat's martial arts were incomplete. Otherwise, he would have seized the opportunity to kill him, rather than merely kicking him off the stage. Tihao's expression was twisted with malice, his heart consumed by fury. "The match has concluded," Pang Long stated with indifferent detachment. Tihao froze, only then returning to his senses. He glanced at the incense stick nearby. The incense had burned out, and the smoke had already dissipated. His heart sank, his rage reaching a fever pitch. He felt momentarily disoriented, uncertain of his surroundings or how to proceed. It is all a blur. I have lost. In this martial competition to select a guard, I have lost to a lowly piece of trash. As the harsh reality settled in, his mind went blank, though a final shred of hope lingered in his heart. Even though he had fallen from the arena, his martial attainment was clearly a level higher. He was not something that lowly beast could compare to. Perhaps he could still earn the favor of Commander Pang. If he persisted and fought for it, surely there was still a chance. Mustering his courage, he spoke. "Commander Pang, your decree dictates that the loser must die, but the victor shall live. My martial arts are clearly superior to his, as everyone here has witnessed. The very purpose of this duel is surely to select a talent of great martial prowess. Is it not possible for Brother Lai and me to have one more match?" The moment he finished, Pang Long waved his hand impatiently. "The trial has concluded. Li Xian is the victor." As the loser retreated to the servants' quarters, Bin Hao gnashed his teeth, his heart consumed by extreme resentment. "Commander Pang, I cannot accept this outcome. It is unjust. I beg the commander to reconsider." Pang Long cast a cold glance his way, yet he did not utter a single word. Bin Hao suddenly came to his senses and recoiled in fear. Commander Pang spoke. "Enough. The boy has lost. It is ruined. Everything is ruined. I had prepared with such devotion, yet in the end I still lost. Clearly a piece of trash, yet he insisted on competing with me. Would it not have been better for him to remain a submissive servant? Damn it all. If Elder Luo finds out about this, how am I to explain myself?" Bi Hao stood there, utterly dejected and hollow, as if trapped in a nightmare, unable to face the reality of his defeat. I stepped toward him, clasped my hands, and said, "Brother Bit, thank you for looking after me back at the servants' quarters." "Bi Hao, you wretched scoundrel." Just as he prepared to spew insults, he caught sight of the mocking smile on my face. Now that I was a guard, that label of beast was something I should be calling him, not the other way around. It must be known that his uncle, Luo Feng, had attained the position of supervisor precisely because he once served as a guard. Becoming a guard grants one the opportunity to encounter the rudimentary martial arts taught by the madame. For an ordinary person, gaining even a glimmer of this knowledge can provide boundless benefits. Luo Feng was a prime example of this. As the status dynamic reversed, the shift in prestige made Bi Hao all the more resentful. Everything that had transpired was rightfully supposed to be his. "Brother Li, congratulations." Bi Hao's forced smile was far uglier than a pained grimace. Deng Shi. I had initially intended to lash out at Bi Hao, to curse him as a beast, to vent the pent-up frustration in my heart, but I reconsidered, deciding it was best not to utter the word beast. The person being insulted may be deeply offended, but the one hurling the insult, by default, inadvertently admits that his own character is just as lowly. One should not assume that simply because one holds a higher position, those beneath them are mere cattle. In doing so, the one delivering the insults effectively validated the very label of beast they sought to impose. In the future, when faced with those of higher status, they will instinctively lower themselves, placing their own existence on the level of beasts. After all, that is precisely how they treat those beneath them. I may choose to follow the rules of this world, climbing the path to power step by step, but I refuse to be assimilated into the likes of Binhao. Upon hearing the words, "Congratulations," Binhao felt a sharp sting of fury. This power was far more devastating and lethal than any vulgar verbal attack. Binhao gritted his teeth and spat out the words, "Congratulations, congratulations indeed." He clutched his chest in rage, choked by an anger that left him unable to speak. In the distance, Pang Long nodded to himself. He possesses triumph without arrogance, and patience without weakness. This young man is quite interesting. You are the new recruit who followed me here, Li Jian, from Luoping Alley, Qingming County. Pang Long walked ahead, recalling the information regarding my background. Yes, I replied with a nod. My footsteps were light, producing no unnecessary sound. Pang Long gave a slight nod of approval. You have passed the selection for the guards. From this day forth, you are no longer a servant, but an official guard of the estate. However, there is one thing I must remind you of. While the taifu and benefits of our guards are superior to those of the servants, at the end of the day, you remain an indentured servant of this estate. You must be loyal to your duties and refrain from being arrogant or insolent. Can you abide by this? With my lips, I assured him that I naturally could. But in my heart I thought, these rules are well intended, yet the human heart is complex. And as for the requirement to not be arrogant, those who can truly achieve this are few and far between. The bout just now must have left you hungry. I will take you to the dining hall in the guard quarters, and then I will gradually introduce you to the rules. Pang Long's tone was gentle, clearly showing a growing interest in me. During the earlier trial on the arena stage, I had deliberately concealed my true capabilities, allowing my opponent to underestimate me before securing victory at the final moment. Even he had been deceived from the start, assuming I was merely a menial laborer with nothing but brute strength and cruelty. This young man has a sharp mind, he thought. We had not traveled far before we arrived at another structure. A plaque hanging above the entrance bore the words, "Dining Hall." This building was reserved specifically for the guards, and as such, After sitting down, Pang Long gently waved his hand, ordering 2 top-tier portions. Soon enough, 2 plates of rice and side dishes were brought to the table. I looked on, my mouth watering, as the meal consisted of a bowl of soup, 1 meat dish, and 2 vegetable dishes. The meat dish was braised pork, not lean meat but pork belly, with a perfect balance of fat and muscle. The 2 vegetable dishes were boiled bean sprouts and shredded stir-fried radish. They did not look particularly fancy, but they were well seasoned with ample oil and salt, glistening with a sheen of fat, and smelled quite savory. While it could not be considered a banquet of rare delicacies, in these times, having such a meal was already a stroke of good fortune. Eat up. This is the standard ration for a house guard. To put it simply, a house guard is someone tasked with protecting the estate. Without a foundation in martial arts, one cannot guard a house. Since you have joined as a house guard, you will no longer need to perform menial tasks, but you must commit yourself to martial training. Regarding your sustenance, you must never be careless. Pang Long picked up his wooden chopsticks, dumped the rice, meat, and vegetables into the soup, mixed it all together, and took a loud, slurping gulp from the edge of the bowl. Soup, broth, rice, vegetables, and meat. Everything was shoveled into his stomach in one go. Before I could even start eating, I began asking about martial arts training. Pang Long did not respond, finishing the bowl in a single breath. His method of eating was truly unique. He consumed the meal as if drinking water, vanishing it like a whirlwind. Yet he somehow retained a sense of elegance. Once the bowl was polished clean as if new, he finally replied, "Every newcomer is fascinated by martial arts. I have no obligation to answer your questions regarding the martial Dao, but seeing as you are green and new to this place, I will allow you to ask me 3 questions related to it." My eyes lit up, thinking to myself that since Pang Long told me to ask freely, there was no need to be overly restrained. I immediately asked, "Can martial arts extend one's lifespan and help a person achieve immortality?" My current situation was dire. How could I dare to covet immortality? I asked this solely to quickly grasp the general nature of the martial Dao. Pang Long paused. Naturally, it is possible. However, he did not explain in detail. Instead, he scrutinized my expression. Seeing that there was no frantic excitement on my face, he was satisfied that I was not some delusional dreamer, but rather one driven by simple curiosity. I pondered for a moment. In this place, Could I find a path forward? Pang Long's expression grew complex. This time, he neither said it was possible nor impossible, instead replying, "It is harder than ascending to the heavens." In gears. You have only one question left. After 2 questions, I had already formed a rough impression of the martial Dao in this world, and so, I let my imagination run wild, recalling the countless stories and books I had consumed in my previous life. They all shared a single commonality: the absorption of a specific energy from the atmosphere to enhance one's own strength. Could it be that this world operated under the same principles? Thus, I ask whether the so-called martial way was the act of sensing and harnessing an invisible power present in the air. Pang Long looked at me with a strange expression, remarking that he did not know where I had conjured such a notion, but he could answer me clearly. Your line of thinking is far too whimsical. Air is merely air. How could there be any mystical power within it? He nearly burst into laughter as he spoke, finding me to be an interesting lad with thoughts both unconventional and flights of fancy. Having posed my 3 questions regarding the martial way, I had attained a general understanding. After thanking Pang Long, the hunger in my stomach surged, and I began to devour my food. As the rich, fatty meat settled in my stomach, the nourishment restored my vigor. In a few quick mouthfuls I cleared my plate. It had been a long time since I felt such satiation, and my mood improved accordingly. Upon leaving the stone house, Pang Long suddenly heard a spiritual summons. It was a decree from the lady. He dared not delay, for he had to meet the lady personally. But leaving me alone here was not a viable option. At that moment, a guard approached from the opposite direction. He called out loudly, "Zhao Han, I entrust this newcomer to you. Take him along and show him the ropes." With that, he hurried away. The guard, named Zhao Han, possessed a gentle smile. He did not look down upon me despite my status as a mere servant. Seeing my tattered clothes and disheveled hair, he said, "Commander Pang has ordered me to look after you, so I must ensure you are well cared for. Follow me. I will lead you to a bathhouse so you may wash away the grime and change into a new set of robes." The material of the guard's uniform was durable and sturdy, far superior to the rags of a servant. "You will have no need for those old clothes again. Once you take them off, just discard them." Arriving at the large wooden bath chamber, I stripped off my clothes, drew water from the wooden barrel, and poured it over myself. The frigid water drenched me instantly. Winter had arrived, and though the snow had yet to fall, the air was already biting cold. Yet, the chill soon dissipated, replaced by a wave of warmth spreading through my body, invigorating my spirit. Enduring the freezing temperature, I scrubbed the filth from my skin and straightened my matted, long hair. After 7 buckets of water, my skin was flushed red from the cold, but my body was finally clean. I then donned the uniform of a guard. The kind-hearted Zhao Han's eyes brightened as he applauded, remarking that fine feathers make fine birds. In less than an hour, the unkempt servant had undergone a metamorphosis, emerging as a handsome youth. "Brother Li, you are actually quite dashing. You finally look the part of a guard. Come, let me take you on a tour and explain the rules of our guard unit." Zhao Han draped an arm over my shoulder and led me outside. Our servant quarters are divided into 4 ranks, strictly categorized as Jia, Yi, Bing, and Ding. You have just joined, so you are currently rank Ding, while I am rank Bing. The higher the rank, the better the monthly salary and benefits. As they were speaking, the 2 arrived in front of a row of houses. "This is where we reside." Zhao Han stopped and cast his gaze into the distance. The buildings here were arranged in neat, orderly rows, aligned horizontally and vertically, with crimson bricks and green-tiled roofs. The style was reminiscent of military barracks. Each room could accommodate 4 people. This place at least resembled a living space fit for humans. I could not help but sigh, lamenting internally that this was, after all, merely a dwelling for servants. The square room measured 1 zhang across, containing 4 beds that looked incredibly cramped and stifling. On the plaque of each room, a number was inscribed. "Brother Leah, why don't you stay with me? We just happen to have 1 vacancy." Zhao Han said with a smile. "Excellent. I couldn't ask for better." I laughed heartily and walked toward room number 113. Zhao Han pushed the door open and stepped inside. "Haha, let me introduce everyone so you can get acquainted." As the door opened, 2 men were inside, 1 thin and 1 stout. Their names were Wang Chun and Zhuo Yili, respectively. Zhao Han introduced the 2 parties to each other. After learning each other's names, he spoke up. "Brother Li is the youngest among us, so we shall call him Little Fourth. Wang Chun, at 21, is the second eldest, and Zhuo Yili, at 19, is the third." Zhao Han patted everyone on the shoulder and said, "Little Fourth, from this day forward we are all in the same boat. We must look out for one another. If you have any questions in the future, do not hesitate to ask us." Night fell. Following the introductions provided by Zhao Han during the day, I had grasped the basic rules of the servant quarters. I lay on the bed, my heart filled with conflicting emotions, unsure whether to be happy or sorrowful. On one hand, I deeply realized that people are divided into various ranks of status, like fish and shrimp of different kinds. On the other hand, I was relieved that my quality of life had finally improved. Zhao Han turned over and saw me staring blankly at the ceiling, then said, "Little fourth, hurry and go to sleep." I nodded in acknowledgement and closed my eyes to sleep. One day, in the open courtyard before the main estate, hundreds of guards gathered. Pang Long stood at the front, and after finishing the roll call, he spoke indifferently. "This morning's training begins with 3 laps around the manor grounds. All of you, show some energy, warm up your muscles and bones. On the path of martial arts, there are absolutely no shortcuts. The most taboo thing is to harbor delusions. If you can master even the most basic techniques, you can consider yourselves to have a foundation for the future." As soon as Pang Long's voice faded, the morning training commenced. I merged into the crowd, ran out of the estate gates, and began the circuit. My speed transitioned from a steady pace to a brisk sprint. This estate was far larger than I had imagined, surrounded by towering mountains and vast rivers. Running around the perimeter required traversing several winding mountain paths. Suddenly, the proficiency of my running skill reached 125 hundredths. The first step is merely lifting one's feet and swinging one's arms. It strengthens the body and builds vitality. Why would I not do it? With every step I took, the results of my training pulsed through my arms. My breathing became increasingly rhythmic, and my speed grew unconsciously. By the time I finished the 3 laps, the sky had fully brightened. The proficiency of my running skill had reached 251. Fourth brother, your stamina is not bad to run like this and still not be exhausted. Zhao Han panted heavily, looking somewhat astonished. Running 3 laps around these grounds, trekking over mountains and crossing rivers, is no simple task. Furthermore, the squad did not maintain a slow pace. For you to keep up with the formation is already considered impressive. I am still holding on. I wipe the sweat from my forehead. I cannot say I am not tired, only that I can still endure. Conserve some strength. Later, Commander Pang will likely call you over to personally impart a martial technique to you, Zhao Han reminded me, gesturing toward Pang Long. Sure enough, Pang Long's gaze swept across the guards, and when he saw me, he was visibly taken aback. In only half a day, such a great change has occurred. To think that the insignificant servant boy from before now looks quite distinguished. If he were not the only new face among these guards, I truly would not have recognized him. Li Xian, come here. Pang Long waved me over, and I stepped forward in haste. Pang Long stood with his hands behind his back and said, "Yesterday, an urgent matter arose, so I did not get to impart a martial technique to you. Before I impart this martial art, I must solemnly inform you of one thing. The martial arts we practice were all created by the matriarch. In learning this technique, you must place the matriarch above all else. You are absolutely forbidden from defying her will. Should you disobey, your fate shall mirror that of this bamboo stalk." With those words, he struck out with his palm, aiming at a bamboo stalk in the distance. A sharp snap echoed as the bamboo was cleaved in 2. My eyes widened in shock at his display of prowess. His strength was truly formidable. Yet when I asked him yesterday if there were any leads within a 10-mile radius, he replied that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. This signifies that the lead within the manor is the matriarch herself, a secret even Pang Long cannot reach. That is the origin of his lament, that it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. In other words, while his techniques are indeed potent, in the eyes of a true master, they have yet to reach the threshold of mastery. These thoughts flashed through my mind in an instant. "Have you committed this to memory?" Pang Long asked with indifference. "I have remembered it well," I nodded. "Until I possess sufficient strength, I can only abide by the rules." "Very well. Seeing that you have a foundation in fist techniques, I shall impart a set of boxing arts to you. You must study with absolute focus and must not grow slothful. Do not assume that becoming a manor guard entitles you to rest easy. According to the manor's regulations, if you do not prove your worth to my faction within 15 days, I will cast you out of the guard unit and force you to return to being a menial laborer." Pang Long warned me with a stern voice. I cupped my hands and replied, "I shall not fail the expectations of Commander Pang." Pang Long's expression softened. "Watch carefully." With that, he leaped into the air, plunging into the center of the training grounds. After moving his limbs with fluid grace, he unleashed a punch. What appeared to be a feint at first glance was, in reality, concealing a lethal killing intent. He struck 17 times in rapid succession, his kicks sweeping in every direction, attacking east and west with perfect coordination between front and back. Pang Long ceased his movements and stood straight. "I know you yearn to reach that peak realm, but from this day forth, abandon such delusional dreams. Focus entirely on mastering these techniques. The internal force within them is enough to last us a lifetime. Techniques are merely tools for combat. Internal force is the root of a martial artist. These two are the foundation of any path of martial arts, though without 10 or 20 years of tempering, one can hardly hope to achieve anything of note. For now, I do not demand such things. I only require that you master the incantations and maneuvers of this four directions fist within these 15 days. I memorized it thoroughly and understood the key principles. I nodded. Regardless of the circumstances, the opportunity to learn martial arts is always a blessing. Furthermore, Pang Long had offered me a subtle hint. When he spoke the words four directions, he emphasized them with intent, clearly warning me not to harbor foolish delusions or underestimate these techniques. Things that appear ordinary on the surface are, in truth, of vital importance. Pang Long tossed the manuscript of the Four Directions Fist to me, turned his head toward the crowd, and called out, "Luo Tongwu, you possess a unique understanding of the Four Directions First. I entrust the task of teaching him the techniques to you." Luo Tongwu smiled warmly at me and replied, "Rest assured, Commander Pang, I shall dedicate myself to his instruction." Brother List, the Four Directions Fist emphasizes that within the square there is a circle. It may appear rigid, but it actually conceals great flexibility. I shall demonstrate it once. You must memorize the footwork carefully. Luo Tongwu smiled gently, and right before my eyes he performed the Four Directions Fist. I followed his movements like a student mimicking a master, imitating the footwork and the strikes. Learning a complete set of techniques for the first time felt awkward, but after practicing a few more times I began to grasp the secret essence. Not bad, Brother Lai. You have great aptitude. Keep practicing, and mastering this technique will not be difficult. Luo Tongwu nodded. Before long, it was midday. Luo Tongwu said, "Brother Lai, please continue your practice alone. I must attend to my patrol duties this afternoon, but I will continue your instruction tomorrow." Understood. Thank you for your guidance, Brother Luo. I felt deeply grateful. After Luo Tongwu departed, I continued to practice the strikes over and over again. In the past, I had to practice in secret. Now that I could do so openly, I naturally had to cherish this opportunity. To me, even this arduous and repetitive training held its own unique satisfaction. With every strike I threw, I cross-referenced it with the manual. Only when I deemed my technique proficient did I set aside the manual and strike with fluidity. Half an hour later, my strikes had grown steady, and I had mastered the breathing techniques of the Four Directions Fist. Proficiency in Four Directions Fist, 13/500. At the introductory level, this basic boxing style is steady and firm, appearing honest on the outside but concealing cunning within. While easy to grasp, true mastery is incredibly difficult. For a house guard, labor duties are mandatory. As a low-ranking servant, one cannot simply eat, sleep, and practice martial arts all day. The lower the rank of the house guard, the longer the labor, and the more menial tasks one must handle. Only those of higher rank enjoy true leisure. Since I am still a newcomer, I am permitted to focus solely on martial arts for these first 15 days. After that, I must begin reporting for duty, joining patrols, and dealing with various chores, at which point the tranquility of this training will be no more. The other guards had all departed for their patrols, leaving me alone to continue my practice. With every punch thrown, sweat flew several feet away. The power of my strikes was being forged in this very moment. A martial artist refines their techniques and hones their internal strength. Achieving these two things is enough to be considered a master in the secular world. For now, I chose not to dwell on matters of immortality. Focus solely on mastering the martial path before you, and with a clear goal set in your heart, all things will appear within reach. Elsewhere, as Le Tongvan was on patrol, he was suddenly intercepted by the chore steward, La Fuang. La Fuang smiled and said, "Brother La Tong, it has been a long time. Would you care to step inside and sit for a moment?" Le Tongvan furrowed his brows and replied, "Is there something that cannot be discussed out here? Please, come in." La Fuang pushed open the door and gestured for him to enter, offering no further explanation. Le Tongvan nodded with a smile. If there was a favor to be asked, there would surely be a reward. How could he refuse? After they sat down, La Fuang poured a cup of tea and said, "You and I are well acquainted, so I will not beat around the bush. 5 taels of silver to send Li Xian back to the chores department." Le Tongvan replied indifferently, "That Li Xian is being watched by Lord Bang. He is not so easily touched." "Ha ha," La Fuang laughed. "But for you it should be quite simple. Lord Tang has ordered you to teach him the 4 directions first. You need only use a few tricks within the techniques to ensure his performance is abysmal in 15 days. Time, and the matter will naturally be resolved." Le Tongvan merely sipped his tea, remaining silent. 10 taels of silver? La Fuang's expression darkened, though he stifled his anger. It seemed 10 taels were not enough. La Fusong feared that if Li Xian were to rise in prominence, it would threaten his own position. "It is a deal." Le Tongvan narrowed his eyes and smiled, thinking to himself that with just a few words, he had already sold his integrity. Once the morning training concluded, I was filled with questions, and immediately went to find Le Tongvan for guidance. Le Tongvan wore the same smile as the day before. "Little brother Li, perform the strikes once before me, and I shall show you how to refine your movements." I nodded. Setting my stance, I finished the routine, secretly believing I had practiced with great diligence. While I could not claim rapid progress, at the very least, my form was correct and disciplined. To my surprise, Latongvan shook his head repeatedly. "Slow, truly far too slow. Little brother Lai, your aptitude for the martial arts is quite mediocre." "Is that so?" I felt a flicker of doubt. It seemed he had not said that yesterday. "Alas, at this rate, I fear you will find it difficult to pass the test set by Commander Bang in 15 days. Latongyan spoke with an air of concern, yet suspicion stirred within me. Were his words genuine, or merely a facade? I had not been idle yesterday. My proficiency had steadily increased. Was I truly as inept as he claimed? He shook his head and sighed. "Very well, I shall instruct you myself. From now on, practice according to these secrets, and I guarantee you will be able to satisfy Commander Pang." With that, he demonstrated a set of fist techniques right before my eyes, and I practiced along with him once. My proficiency increased by leaps and bounds, which only made it rarer for this cultivation technique to be flawed. This Latong Yun harbored intentions to harm me. I scrutinized him closely. Everything was now clear. Latong Yun's smile remained gentle, his expression one of complete concern. "Little brother Lick, have you understood? Practice according to this method henceforth. If there is anything you do not grasp, feel free to come and ask me." "Very well. Go about your tasks," I thought, deciding for the moment not to alert the enemy. Feigning agreement, I waited until Latong Yun had departed, then immediately reverted to the original fist technique, throwing punch after punch, steadily increasing my proficiency, tempering my body. My 4 directions fist proficiency reached 187/500ths, entering the introductory stage, and in a flash, 4 days had passed. On that day, during the Hour of the Dragon, everyone else had sat down to rest. I alone continued to practice the technique against the wooden post. Zhao Han and the others relaxed nearby, chatting and laughing in high spirits. Seeing my dedication to martial arts, they did not disturb me, and quietly took their leave. I acted as if I heard nothing. I unleashed a single strike. In that instant, the essence contained within the fist technique underwent a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering transformation. My entire body trembled, and a flash of light danced before my eyes. My 4 directions fist proficiency had reached the level of mastery, where hardness and softness were perfectly balanced. The hard can suppress all 8 directions, the soft can move the very heavens and earth. Through bitter cultivation of the fist technique, I had achieved a breakthrough. At the same time, I grasped its inner essence, the ability to hear from all 8 directions. As long as I focused, my hearing sharpened significantly, allowing me to track movements based on the sound of the wind. I could easily discern the patterns of an opponent's strikes. I was both astonished and overjoyed. Truly, heaven does not fail those who persevere. As long as one cultivates with diligence, there will be rewards. 4 more days passed in the blink of an eye. After the morning session, as was my custom, I chose a secluded spot to diligently train my fist techniques. I had just assumed the stance for the 4 directions fist, when I saw Zhao Han and Wang Chun approaching. I withdrew my stance, and asked curiously, "Eldest, what has put you in such a fine mood today? Is there some joyous occasion?" "Oh, 4, did you forget what today is? It is the day we receive our monthly wages." Zhao Han laughed and said, "Haha, so that is it," as I calculated the time to myself. "But I have been in the manor for less than a month. Do I receive pay today as well?" Naturally. Forget about training for now. Let's go collect our wages." Zhao Han draped his arm over my shoulder, practically dragging me along. And so, the 4 of us from the tiger fighting dormitory headed to the accounting office together. Outside the accounting office, a long line had formed, and we had to wait for half an incense stick of time before it was our turn. Li Xianyuan was previously a handyman with a monthly salary of 50 wen. Now, as a 4th-class guard, his salary is 150 wen. Having performed well during his time as a handyman, he received a bonus of 37 wen, bringing his total earnings this month to 187 wen. The treasurer could not help but glance at him a few extra times. To rise from a handyman to a guard is a truly rare occurrence. He had developed quite an impression of this young man. Jiji signed his indenture in late autumn, and possesses decent penmanship. After collecting our stipends, Wei Shi, Zhao Han, Wang Chun, and I, the 4 of us, were not scheduled for patrols, a rare occasion for us to gather in full. I then voiced the question on my mind. Even with these wages, where is there to spend them while living within the manor? You can go to the apothecary to exchange them for medicinal pills. The benefit of a single medicinal pill is worth several days of ordinary food. You must understand that the most important aspect of martial arts training is not just the practice, but the nourishment. Only with proper sustenance can one's physique and stamina keep up, allowing one to reach higher achievements in martial arts. Hearing this, Zhao Han laughed. Naturally, you could also consider taking a trip to the nearby Qingning County. There are plenty of places to spend money there, as long as you return on time. My heart stirred, and I asked, how does one go about requesting leave? Just go and inform the gang commander, that is all it takes. What is it? Does old Four wish to go out and see the world? Zhao Han nudged me with his elbow. Younger brother, you have been training for too long. You ought to find someone to release your pent-up fire, otherwise you will ruin your body. Ha ha. Zhao Han spoke with a beaming expression. Wang Chun and Wei Shi chimed in as well. Once we receive our rewards, we all look forward. I merely offered a smile, though beneath the surface, my thoughts were far from venting frustration. Rather, I was struck by how long it had been since I last saw my younger brother. With the examinations approaching, he ought not to overexert himself. Zhao Han, being well acquainted with the path, had everything settled in no time. The four of us departed from the manor gates, following the mountain path toward Qingning County. As we walked, we chatted idly about everything under the sun, the atmosphere between us remarkably harmonious. Passing by a narrow alleyway, I spoke up. Big brother, second brother, third brother, you go on ahead. I have no desire to visit the pleasure house. My younger brother is home alone, and as I have rarely had the chance to venture out, I must pay him a visit. Very well. Zhao Han waved his hand, offering no further objection. By now, it was already midday. At the thought of my younger brother, I found my pace quickening instinctively. Since he was small, Adi has been sensible, bright, and guileless. This remained true even after our father took his own life. As the eldest brother, I had shouldered the responsibility of caring for him. The bond of brotherhood runs deeper than anything else. Arriving before a dilapidated thatched cottage, I raised my voice and called out, Adi! Adi! After my third call, a voice filled with joy echoed from within the house. Brother, is that you? A thin, frail figure hurried out, clad in the tattered, coarse linen clothes left behind by our father. His small frame could barely support the oversized garments. Though his hair was unkempt, his eyes burned with a brilliant, piercing light. The moment Li Xiaofan caught sight of me, his eyes welled up with tears. I rushed forward to embrace my brother tightly. He is so young, forced to cower alone in this thatched hut amidst these chaotic, man-eating times. I had constantly feared that his clothes might be stolen, his few copper coins snatched away, or that he would be bullied by others. Returning to find Adi safe and sound at last allowed my heart to settle. To be safe. How wonderful. How truly wonderful that is. That afternoon, I shared a meal of fatty pork with Li Xiaofan. Considering that winter had arrived and the room lacked both adequate bedding and protection from the draft, I went out and purchased a new cotton-padded jacket for him. In such hard times, appearing in new clothes would inevitably draw unwanted attention. I instructed my brother to wear the new jacket underneath, keeping our father's coarse linen coat on the outside, and urged him to avoid venturing into unfamiliar places. Once these tasks were finished, I went to visit Auntie Liu, who lived next door. I gave her 30 copper coins, asking her to keep a watchful eye on my brother during my absence. Brother, are you leaving again? Li Xiaofan's eyes glistened with tears, knowing full well that his brother could not stay for long. I handed my entire monthly wage to Li Xiaofan and instructed him carefully. This is 80 coins. Remember well, use it to buy meat and nourish yourself. Buy meat and eat. Hearing these words, Li Xiaofan clenched his fist tightly. Very well, the hour is late. Return home quickly. I waved my hand, turned, and strode away. My figure rounded the corner of the alley and vanished from sight. Li Xiaofan chased after me for a few steps, his gaze darkening, before he turned back toward his dilapidated thatched cottage. The interior was barren, with nothing but 4 crumbling walls and a rickety wooden bed. He sprawled across the bed, pulled out a tattered book, and focused his mind on reading. Only through study could he find a path to escape his fate. At this moment, on a mountain trail 3 miles away, 4 men walked together, their conversation echoing periodically. Zhao Han and his companions were gossiping about their romantic exploits at the pleasure house, boasting of beauties held in their arms, their breath fragrant like orchids, the seductive scent still lingering upon them. It was a pity that the wages for a low-level servant were so meager, and their authority so limited, that even with a forged leave permit, they could not remain outside the estate overnight. Seeing that dusk had settled, they returned to the estate together. Commander Pang! As they approached the estate gate, Zhao Han, still slightly intoxicated, caught a glimpse of Pang Long. His drunkenness vanished instantly. He hurried forward to offer a salute. Pang Long cast a cold glance at the 4 men. Did you pool your money to forge a leave permit, just to squander your time at the pleasure house? Yes, Commander. Zhao Han scratched his head in embarrassment. As long as you do not violate the estate regulations, where you go is your own business. I have no right to interfere. Pang Long spoke coldly. Then his gaze rested upon me. He furrowed his brows, sighed, and shook his head, his expression revealing profound disappointment. You are still in your assessment period, while they indulge themselves because they have already been accepted as full members. You, however, are merely a trainee guard, Instead of seizing the time to refine the four directions fist technique, you squander your potential in this manner. You truly disappoint me. Commander Pang, you have misunderstood. I smiled, intending to explain, but Pang Long waved his hand. No need for further words. Martial arts do not lie. When the day of the assessment arrives, I shall attend in person to witness your progress. If you do not meet my standards, and fail to master this technique, you will return to being a mere servant. Having said that, he turned and strode away. I watched Pang Long's retreating figure, and upon hearing that tone of disappointment, I felt remarkably calm within. To be recognized by others is certainly ideal, but to forge iron, one must have a strong foundation of one's own. Rather than exhausting one's spirit to seek the praise of others, it is better to persevere and walk one's own path. Time flowed by, and soon, the day of the examination arrived. That morning, I was at the courtyard, practicing martial arts as per my daily routine. Standing in a secluded corner, I stood with feet planted wide, executing my strikes in sequence. I felt myself making steady progress. When throwing a strike, I no longer needed to recall the forms from the manual. For the moment my mind stirred, the momentum of my fist was already unleashed. In the parlance of the martial arts world, this is the state of transcending the manual, having moved beyond the rigid forms to attain a personal comprehension. My fist techniques had begun to develop a style of their own. I felt a surge of warmth within my danshin. My internal energy had condensed to the size of a fist. With a single thought, I channeled my internal energy into my punch. As I struck out, it generated a gale of force that cracked through the air with rhythmic snapping sounds. I was deeply immersed in the fruits of my labor when Commander Pang arrived. Hearing a commotion among the crowd, I turned to look. Pang Long was striding into the courtyard. Li Xian, today is the day of your examination. I believe I need not say anything further. Commander Pang, this subordinate understands. I nodded firmly. Luo Tongyun let out a sigh at that moment, revealing a look of regret. Luo Tongyun, Li Xian was trained by you, so this examination will naturally be conducted by your hand. Pang Long spoke indifferently. Do not show any personal favoritism. If you do, even you shall be punished. Follow the rules exactly. Brother Lai, you heard him. Luo Tongyun shrugged helplessly and stepped forward. Brother Luo, please grant me your guidance. I cupped my hands, stepped forward, and did not hold back. If I happen to injure you, I hope you will forgive me. Luo Tongyun offered a perfunctory bow in return, his left hand clasped behind his back. If you can withstand more than 100 moves from me, then consider yourself to have grasped the profound mysteries. He turned his head toward Pang Long to seek his opinion. Commander Pang, do you find this arrangement acceptable? Pang Long nodded in approval. Martial arts cannot be feigned. The moment one strikes, the truth is revealed. I will not waste words. The limit is 100 moves. Latong, my nephew, make your move. Latong puffed out his chest with his head held high, full of confidence and composure, then beckoned me forward with a wave of his hand. Seeing this, I stepped forward twice, and launched a direct punch toward his face. This punch appeared entirely ordinary, striking straight ahead without any signs of refined technique, as if I had learned nothing at all. Latong sneered, flicking his right hand lightly, intending to deflect the blow with ease to demonstrate his superior strength. Just as the fist and palm were about to collide, I pivoted on my toes, shifting my entire body in one fluid motion. The subtle change in posture caused my fist to veer off course abruptly. What was meant to be a strike to the face transformed into a diagonal blow toward his lower abdomen. This is the feint to the east, strike to the west technique, from the four directions first. Fist techniques are inherently direct. Distinguishing between a feint and a real strike is simple, especially with basic forms. There are only a few movements in this style. One only needs to memorize them thoroughly to achieve entry-level mastery. Once a strike is initiated, the inner energy converges into every blow, and one is committed to following through. Only true grandmasters of martial arts possess the ability to retract or change techniques mid-strike at will. The essence of the four directions first lies in its linear path, yet one can utilize the movement of the body to alter the trajectory of every strike, achieving the goal of feinting to the east to strike in the west. When novice martial artists engage in combat, this tactic is incredibly unpredictable and highly effective. Moreover, I had already seized the initiative, not only employing a feint, but also capitalizing on the opponent's moment of vulnerability. This move of mine has been effective every single time. Latong was so startled by the caliber of this punch that his scalp went numb. This simple strike not only proved that I had mastered the fundamentals of the fist technique, but also suggested that my proficiency was nearing his own. He hastily retracted his other hand to defend, but because of his initial arrogance, it was already too late. With a crisp sound, his palm went numb and began to swell. Latong cursed inwardly, thinking that this brat did not show any mercy at all, truly using his full strength. Staggering back 3 or 4 steps, his face turned alternating shades of green and red, utterly humiliated. Taking a deep breath, he feigned generosity and offered a hollow compliment. Truly, my efforts in teaching you this feinted to the east, attack in the west maneuver were not in vain. You have finally grasped the essence of it. I let out a cold laugh. Seizing the moment while Luo Tongyun was still speaking, I sprang up to pursue him, unleashing 3 consecutive strikes. Every blow was a lethal strike. It was his own fault for being so arrogant. He always considered himself the superior one, assuming he was merely offering me guidance and attempting to open his mouth to salvage a shred of his dignity. He little expected that I am a man who repays every grievance in full, and a debt once incurred must be settled. I was determined to seize this opportunity to beat him into a pulp, missing no chance whatsoever. Every punch I threw was delivered with my full strength, all aimed directly at his vital points. Realizing that something was amiss, Luo Tongyun retreated repeatedly, his expression becoming exceedingly unsightly. By now, he no longer wished to show mercy, but having already lost the initiative, attempting to find an opening to counterattack amidst such a relentless storm of strikes was no easy task. In the trials of martial arts, where life and death hang in the balance, one's cultivation level is merely one of the deciding factors. For martial artists like myself, what truly determines victory is the ability to adapt on the fly and the seizing of the initiative. I pushed the act of seizing the initiative to its limit. While my momentum was at its peak, I unleashed the fist that shakes the 4 directions. This technique was a treacherous move, even more devious than the feint to the east, attack in the west, because this strike is designed to deceive even the one who executes it. Although this fist that shakes the 4 directions contains the word fist, it is, in reality, a kick. To hide a foot technique within a fist technique. If you fail to comprehend the essential secret, you will train it as a punching move, rendering it entirely powerless. As this kick was unleashed, Luo Tongyun was utterly caught off guard. In an instant, he was struck by the counterblow. His chest shuddered violently as he spat blood, sent flying back 3 zang. Unable to steady himself, he crashed into the ground and rolled 3 times over. The spectators were stunned into silence. What has happened here? Was the master not supposed to be going easy on his disciple? How has it come to this? Suddenly, a thunderous applause erupted. It was Pang Long. He stood up, his face filled with excitement. Very good. Your mastery of fist techniques has far exceeded my expectations. The moment he saw me unleash that kick, Pang Long began to view me with entirely new eyes. For the 4-direction first was a technique created by the Manor Lord himself during his leisure time. At that moment he was struck by a peculiar idea: to weave kicks into the fist technique, to achieve an effect of utter surprise. This secret was known only to Pang Long. When he taught the 4-direction fist to the guards, he did not intentionally mention it. Thus, until today, I am the only one who has been able to execute this kick. Relying on this feat alone is enough to command Pang Long's attention. Very well, Li Xian. You have passed the trial. Pang Long strode forward, laughing heartily, and clapped a heavy hand upon my shoulder. I smiled but remained silent. How did you know that the suppression of the 4 directions technique was actually intended to be performed with a kick? Pang Long asked. After practicing it repeatedly, it simply felt more logical to use a kick than a punch, I replied casually. Haha. Excellent, truly excellent. You possess remarkable intuition, Pang Long said. This is a bone tempering pill. Take it. From this day forward, you are an official guard of the rear courtyard, effective tomorrow. Beyond your martial training, you will also be expected to participate in the guard's daily duties. Do your best, and do not be negligent. I certainly will. I nodded firmly. The trial had concluded. Luo Tong wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stepped toward me, intending to say something. His expression shifted constantly, veering between rage and bewilderment, mingled with shock and embarrassment, desperate to salvage some shred of his dignity. Yet in the end, he could not swallow his resentment. Finally, he narrowed his eyes, abandoning any pretense. With a cold glare and a sharp snort of disdain, he turned and walked away. 4th brother, congratulations. Zhao Han and the others approached, genuinely pleased for me. 4th brother, you have a bright future ahead of you. Do you realize that Commander Pang has his eyes on you now? I felt a flick. Tiger blood pill. This is actually a tiger blood pill, Zhuo Yili remarked. We have already passed the recruit assessment. Commander Pang only rewarded us with the Lu blood pill. Compared to the tiger blood pill, the difference is like heaven and earth. Zhao Han, the 4th brother, spoke with a grave expression. You had best consume this tiger blood pill immediately, otherwise you will certainly attract the greed of others. No sooner had he finished speaking than a figure appeared not far ahead, blocking the path. It was Jiang Yun, a second-class guard we had encountered a few days prior. Are you Li Xuan? Jiang Yun approached rapidly and said indifferently, Are you selling this tiger blood pill or not? I apologize, but I am not selling it, I replied with an apologetic tone. Though I remained polite, I did not show any sign of subservience. Jiang Yun narrowed his eyes. You are merely a 4th-class guard. Consuming a tiger blood pill is nothing more than a waste of heavenly treasure. Are you certain you will not sell it? I am willing to pay 500 coins, Zhao Han whispered. This tiger blood pill is worth at least 700 coins. As soon as those words left his mouth, a sharp slap echoed out, and both of Zhao Han's cheeks swelled instantly. Without a word, Jiang Yun had struck him twice, his movements blindingly fast. I could not even perceive how he had executed the strikes. Zhao Han was left dazed and reeling, nearly collapsing to the ground. Jiang Yun's face was filled with disdain. Is it your place to lecture me on the value of a tiger blood pill? Do you think I am unaware of its worth? He stepped closer, looming over me. Will you sell it, or will you not? I shook my head and replied, I apologize, it is not for sale. Are you not afraid that I will strike you as well? Jiang Yun said coldly, his internal energy already gathering in his palm. If you wish to strike, then strike. I acknowledge that I am not your match right now. If you wish to rob me, then rob me. I acknowledge that I am not your match right now. My tone was calm, yet unyielding. I swore to myself that one day, I would make him pay back every debt with interest. Very well, you brat. Jiang Yun gritted his teeth, finding himself momentarily at an impasse. Do you think I do not want to simply take it by force? It is just that Commander Pang Long has only just bestowed this pill. If it were snatched away immediately after, it would show a blatant lack of respect for his authority. Jiang Yun realized she would soon be returning empty-handed, and being unable to contain her fury, she prepared to teach me a lesson. However, noticing my indifferent expression and complete lack of fear, an idea suddenly struck her. She turned her attention toward Wang Chun and Zhuo Yili instead, and with a series of sharp slaps, she struck each of them 4 times. Her speed was so swift that it was only after she ceased her assault that they began to feel the searing, burning pain spreading across their faces. Remember this well. This beating is because of him, she spat. If you dare breathe a word of this to Pang Long, I will come to settle scores with you every single day. Jiang Yun walked away, yet did not forget to cast a venomous glare in my direction. That woman possesses a truly sinister heart. I furrowed my brows and asked with concern, Eldest brother, second brother, third brother, are you all right? It is nothing, they replied. Wang Chun forced a smile. Is it really nothing? Zhao Han wiped away his tears, not from weeping, but because the stinging sensation in his cheeks had forced his eyes to well up. That woman has clearly refined her, jade snail palm, to the great perfection stage. Zhao Han touched his cheek. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression appeared rather terrifying. If my estimation is correct, before long our faces will begin to swell significantly. The internal energy of the jade snail palm remains lodged within the skin, eventually leaving a permanent handprint. If we cannot neutralize that energy, the 3 of us will be permanently disfigured. My heart sank. Is there any way to neutralize it? There is, Zhao Han replied with a bitter laugh. We would need that Jiang Yun to help us resolve our fate. She would simply need to strike us a few more times with her full strength. Is that truly possible? That woman Jiang Yun is notoriously cruel. Wang Chun clutched his cheek, and upon realizing the gravity of the situation, his expression became indescribable. Perhaps it is possible. Halfway through his sentence, the atmosphere grew deathly silent. I understood what he meant. Jiang Yun's sudden appearance was driven primarily by the tiger blood pill. If I were to obediently agree to sell the tiger blood pill to Jiang Yun, perhaps this entire matter could be resolved. I clenched my fists tightly, looking toward Zhao Han and the others. Their cheeks were beginning to swell, growing as large as fists, making them look like pigs' heads. In a moment, I fear their state will be even more harrowing. Their collective silence betrayed the inner turmoil they were experiencing. If we report this to Commander Pang, is there any way to resolve it? I asked. Zhao Han shook his head. In the Yihei manor, there are hundreds of guards, all of whom are martial practitioners. Whenever there are minor disputes or frictions, Lord Pang never interferes. A warrior must possess spirit and blood. He believes they should not be overly constrained. Pang Long values order above all else. Such being the rule, he will certainly refuse to intervene. That path was closed to us. I thought to myself, they have treated me well, and they have suffered this calamity purely because they stood up for me. If I alone were to suffer the lash, it would be of no consequence. But involving them is something I cannot bear. Seeing their wretched condition, I let out a faint sigh, and chased after the direction Jiang Yun had taken. Not long after, I indeed caught sight of Jiang Yun. I furrowed my brow and shouted in a low, stern voice, You want the tiger blood pill, don't you? Jiang Yun was sitting on a tree branch, as if he knew I would come, and gave a faint, mocking smile. Are you having second thoughts now? Unless you kneel and beg me to buy it, I might show mercy and begrudgingly purchase this blood-nourishing pill from you. I stared fixedly at Jiang Yun, my brows knit tight, my eyes narrowed. Just moments ago, out of concern for my companions, I had truly contemplated relinquishing the blood-nourishing pill. However, the moment I laid eyes on Jiang Yun again, that thought vanished. While Zhao Han and the others selling the blood-nourishing pill was an act of righteousness, and there is nothing to reproach, there are some things that cannot be attained through begging or yielding. If I were to kneel now and beg him to sell the pill at a lower price, could I truly trust Zhang Yun to heal the injuries of Zhao Han's group? My gaze grew determined. It was not certain, and in fact, the probability was remarkably low. Because he is likely to break his word, the weak choose to kneel and beg, while the strong choose to fight with courage. Selling the blood-nourishing pill might buy us a moment of peace. But what if, in the future, Zhang Yun is in a foul mood and decides to strike us again? What would we do then? Since that is the case, it would be better to find a way to seize the big luo palm, cultivate it to the great completion, and help the others dissolve the internal force within them. Thoughts race. If you have no need for this blood-nourishing pill, then, very well, let us part ways here.